Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living.
I'm glad you're here with me today because we get to explore the impact and importance of creating beauty, particularly as part of a healing journey. Everything is energy. It all comes down to that. And beauty itself has a frequency that really is an essential component for the life force to thrive. And that's why I'm particularly excited about my guest today, because she has a unique vision and perspective that has come to her through her own personal journey and really from her background, as well as everything that's happened for her. So stay tuned for her inspiring story and for what it can offer to you. Welcome. I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the quantum connection process. And you can go over to the Baca Institute to discover your unique connection with the essence of who you are by taking the quantum connection quiz. We're each designed to connect directly with source, and if you've been here before, you've heard me say this, but we're each designed to connect in our own unique way, and that's different from your neighbors or your partners. And knowing your own style opens up a deeper connection for you with the universe. And it really is the secret to creating what you want, what you most want in your life. Because who you are is who is needed. And my guest today is Mahwish Syed. She is an award-winning fashion and interior designer, celebrated author, cancer survivor, and devoted mother. Her creations have adorned bodies and homes, I love that, for over 2 decades, fostering spaces that nurture and heal. Featured in distinguished publications like the New York Times, Architectural Digest, Elle Décor, and Hamptons Cottages and Gardens, her designs transcend boundaries. Her book, Purgatory to Paradise, unveils her triumphant cancer journey, showcasing how design became her healing sanctuary. Committed to empowering others, she advocates for personal paradises. Oh, don't you just love that? Affirming that genuine beauty is immediate and sustainable for all. Welcome, Mahwish Syed. I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
I'm delighted to be with you, Laurie, truly.
So where do we start? There were some things that you wrote about that I know we'll touch on today, but something that leapt out at me, and to probably to our listeners too, is around you as an interior designer. I mean, that was your training, that was your expertise, that was your background. But when I think of what that really means, an interior designer.
Yeah, that's God having a great sense of humor. Because as I wrote in my book, it's so interesting, and I pay attention to names. I'm sure you do too. And there's so much poetry in life in general. And the poetry of my life is that I literally learned how to design myself from the inside out during my own cancer journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just, in terms of aesthetics or, physically. It's really truly on the quantum level. It is on an energetic level, which is, I think, that's the perfect connection between you and I. It's really everything. And I truly believe, and this might trigger people or might be different, but to me, there's no difference between body and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I said that emotions are like the way water is liquid, gas, solid, or liquid crystal, which is the 4th phase of water, by the way. I just think our emotions also are manifested in our body in those stages.
Mhm.
And I feel like that level of consciousness is constantly dancing around. And I call that dance basically the upper world and underworld, the light and shadow that we're always navigating within ourselves, whether on a cellular level with autophagy and apoptosis, on an emotional level between grief, sadness, despair, and joy and peace. I
Mm.
think creating a space for yourself to really fill your whole entire being with the full spectrum of your beauty. And by the way, my definition of beauty is also probably different. It's not so much how you look, but how you feel. To me, beauty is a verb, not a noun.
Mm. But it's not, it sounds like it's also energetic.
Yeah, it's a vibration. It is
Mhm.
it's movement, but that's a beingness, Laurie.
Right.
That's a beingness. It's not a static thing because we're not static. We're constantly evolving. We're constantly renewing ourselves.
Our
Whether
cells are constantly renewing ourselves, billions of cells all of the time.
exactly, whether you are ill or not, we are all in this cosmic soup together, marinating in our juices and becoming more delicious over time, I think.
Yeah. So designing yourself from the inside out. Your book, Purgatory to Paradise, certainly, delves into your cancer journey and how that intersects with design. But say more about that designing from the inside out.
Oh, yeah. Well, one thing I really want to set the stage for is that your body's a living ecosystem, and so is your home. So think of your home as your macrocosm and your body as your microcosm. So that way we are in a community and we are interacting with one another at all times. Your home can either heal or kill you, and what you surround yourself with matters. And this
Mhm.
is huge. This is not just in terms of, putting sacred objects and curating sacred objects in your,
Mhm.
I teach about in my course, talismanic objects, things that have meaning for you. But not only that, on a pragmatic level, I also teach about toxic materials, what to curate in terms of your materials that are the hidden killers in your home, and how to create a home that not only heals you, but aligns with your circadian rhythm from a quantum perspective.
So tell me about that. I think I'm going to be saying that a lot today.
That's great. That's great. Well, we are light beings.
Hmm.
We emit light. We have photoreceptors all over our skin.
Hmm.
Most homes I like to call are sarcophagi. They're basically very contained. They don't breathe. A lot of the mold issues and mold allergies that people have are because the materials don't breathe. There's no porosity anymore
Hmm. Hmm.
because we have, created an industrial system which is all for profit and not for health,
Hmm.
right? So in that construct, we're kind of talking about, oh, anti-mold, anti-mold. When you start looking at even construction materials, the whole kind of art of building biology. So that is something that I'm exploring in all the designs that I create. And simply, this is totally free. By opening your window, what you are doing is not only allowing the full spectrum of sunlight to come in because sunlight is not polarized, which means when it bounces off surfaces, it actually does have efficacy. And
Hmm.
most windows, most people don't realize, are laminated to minimize, for the sake of, cost-effective heat resistance and that to some degree, but they are laminated to eliminate portions of the UV light, which has become demonized in modern society. And frankly, we need the full spectrum of light. That is the natural form of blue light. I may, emphasize
Hmm.
the blue light that everyone speaks about, which is from your screen, your phone, your television. That is the toxic blue light. The blue light that is emitted, the blue portion of the spectrum from the sun, is actually needed by your biology.
And so how we live, whether we get outside, whether we create that flow is essential.
Yes. And so opening that window, and by the way, I did designer's tricks where I would use mirrors perpendicular to the window to maximize a view and basically bring light into the space, whether that's, on a wall or just a standing mirror.
Hmm.
Or I would use, and this is a little tip, high gloss paint on your ceilings. So if you have low
Ooh.
ceilings, you can use high gloss. It actually creates this reflectivity that elevates the space so much, but also reflects that sunlight into your space as well.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm looking around at my place and feeling again grateful for the fact that I have floor to ceiling doors everywhere. I don't have any windows. I only have these floor to ceiling doors. And in my office where I am right now, I have huge, view out into the space, into the city, and I have these mirrored glass closet doors that reflect all that. So I'm just sitting here bathed in light.
I love it. I can see that because your skin is glowing. It's such a beautiful thing to behold. So, in addition to opening the window for the light, indoor air, Lori, is far more toxic than
Mhm.
outdoor air. And we don't realize that. So having that airflow is primal. It is
Mhm.
primal for your health because you are ingesting nanoparticles from your carpet,
Mm.
from your furnishings, from your whatever you're surrounding yourself with. That stuff breaks down over
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
in your dust. And
Yeah.
by the way, vacuuming often also helps.
Good point for keeping clean.
Yeah.
So another point that I read and it really jumped out at me in your book was about not being a victim. Here you are, you've been diagnosed and you're embarking on a journey, you're embarking on a path, and yet you were clear, and I'm sure you had to come to this about not being a victim, but an initiate. And I love that.
Thank you. Thank you. I used the analogy of the shepherd in Paulo Coelho's Alchemist. And basically, he was robbed. He saved all his money, he sold all his sheep, and then he goes to Morocco and he's, basically a thief steals his all his life savings because he was on his way to the pyramids. And he had this moment where he decided that he was either going to be a victim of a theft or he was going to be an adventurer on his quest. And I thought, you know what? Everything happens for a reason. I've lived
Mhm.
life, I've gone through other calamities. There were, looking back in hindsight, there were often blessings in disguise, even though in the moment they felt terrible.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I was very open-minded and open-hearted, and I was thinking, can I create space for this diagnosis to not completely derail me? And one thing I want to mention, this is very important for people to realize, is that over 70% of cancer is epigenetic, which means it's the result of your lifestyle and your environment. That is actually a good thing because
Mhm.
that means we have agency.
Right.
We have the ability to, and we have the responsibility as well to make the right choices. But a lot of us think we're making the right choices. I mean, I thought I was living a fairly healthy life, as do many other people.
Mhm.
And so in that moment, I realized that this was an opportunity for me to stay curious,
Mhm.
investigate, because it wasn't genetic and my test came back and I realized, well, what could it be then? What could it be? So I started asking the question. And the other thing I want to mention, and this is very much steeped in our culture, this rhetoric and how we frame certain things. For
Mhm.
example, when you're a cancer, what's the word? You're battling cancer. It's
Mhm.
like you are in a fight with your
You're
own
doing,
body.
you're in war. Yeah, it's,
Right. It agitates you. And not
yeah.
only that, you are in victim mode. The doctor is on their white steed and the cancer is the villain. They're
Mhm.
saving you from that cancer and
Right.
you're in battle with it. Let's fight this thing, right? Fight. You're such a warrior. And it's what I found really destructive about that paradigm is that then it starts me fighting with my own body. Oh my God, my body betrayed me.
Ah, yes. And seeing your body as something foreign.
Alien. Like,
Mhm.
how dare you betray me? How dare you do this to me? Like, people go through that. People go through that. And I realized, and I have meditations for this for every stage
Mhm.
treatment process that I did for myself.
Mhm.
It it was loving, it was kind,
Mm.
it was receptive, right? When you get a cancer diagnosis, believe me, you're in a trauma state.
Of
And
course.
you're booted out of your parasympathetic nervous system
Mhm.
completely, right? So whether it's fight, battling that cancer,
Mhm.
flight, okay, I'm gonna escape over here and not even think about it, which I have girlfriends who are like, I don't want to know,
Mhm.
right? Or freeze, I can't deal with it, or fawn, whatever, trying to figure out a way to love it, right?
Mhm.
Whichever way we go, we're in a trauma state.
Yeah.
And the only way that I knew how, and this is where the design came in, the
Mm.
only way for me to figure out how to be in that healing, rest and relaxation state was to
Mhm.
design as my way through it.
Wow.
And I
Because
did
what you're doing when you're in design, when you're designing, is you're in creation mode.
yes, yes,
And that is how you use that energy, how one uses the energy of change.
right.
Is that because change is constant and change is happening dramatically in your own body, how do I use that in a positive way? How do I use that to create something new?
Yes, yes. And when you're in creation mode, you're in hero mode or heroine mode. You are
Mhm.
that adventurer on your quest
Yes,
to ride that wave, right?
right.
Basically, we're in the unknown. And this is where I wrote about being a mermaid and diving into your
Mhm.
depth. Because we often, and I've done this, I flailed at the top at the surface trying to do the same old thing, expecting to see a different result, and it never works. You just exhaust yourself. And then suddenly I went, wait a second, what if I stop fighting this?
Mhm.
What if I'm not battling this? Because the wave is much bigger than me,
Right.
right?
I
And I'm just
surrendered.
surrender. Surrender gets a bad rap.
Right.
Surrender,
I love what that you talked about that. Yes.
yeah, surrender is not failing. The
Right.
true spiritual, the true spiritual definition of surrender is path of least resistance.
Mhm.
It's
It's trust, as you said.
yes, yes, exact self-trust. Trust in your
Self-trust. Well, self-trust, small s self, but self-trust, big S self. That
body.
part of us that is connected with all there is, that is all there is.
Yes, you are the ocean,
Hmm.
or the whole ocean in one drop,
Hmm.
right? So you're absolutely right. And so I think by using these rituals of reverence, for example, if I couldn't eat my mom's very spicy, lovely favorite comfort food, which was so hard for me to just look at that. It smelled different. Everything just felt different. And whatever it is that I could imbibe, I brought down my best dishes. I used silverware. I used, my napkins. I spread rose petals. I lit a candle.
Mm.
And sliced up a banana in a nice little shape and I added pansies to it. So it was just this thing where I created that beautiful experience
Right.
and help ground into and have gratitude for the things that were nourishing my body as it was, riding that wave through the cancer treatment, all the
Hmm.
waves, and trying to just allow my body to relax into that healing mode.
And we're not taught how to do that, not just in terms of healing, but taking that and expanding upon that. We're not taught how to listen inside. We're not taught how to get quiet enough to hear that small voice of our inner guidance system, which is there for everybody, but people override it because there's so much focus on making it, succeeding, getting ahead, what I have to do, or pleasing someone.
Yes, yes. I call it the Wonder Woman syndrome.
Mm.
You know, we're taught to be everything,
Mm-hmm.
please everyone, which is an impossible task, Laurie. It's impossible. So we're set up, and then we have these expectations of ourselves that we never meet. So
Mm-hmm.
that level of self dissatisfaction, and then going outward to try to fulfill that void, whether that's, eating, or, so whatever it is, that thing, that crutch that we use to self-soothe, those
Mm-hmm.
habits are built from that level of impossible balance, right? That we have that extra expectation, which is why I think it's really important to make space for grief,
Mm.
for despair, for confusion. I'm not saying we have to be happy-go-lucky and sugarcoat a terrifying and often painful experience.
Mm-hmm.
Then that goes for any experience, not just cancer.
Right.
Heart,
Right. Absolutely.
right?
And there's something below that level of confusion, because confusion is when we're trying to figure something out. And when we really drop into our own experience, into our inner GPS, then we may not know. We may be in that place of like, holy crap, I don't know what to do. But let me at least start there and get quiet enough to start to see what might come in because we're connected, what might, come in as a moment of inspiration or a moment of guidance that we could actually listen to and benefit from.
Yeah. And sometimes that voice is a whisper. It's not
Mm-hmm.
so loud. And getting what you say quiet enough to listen. And by the way, I'm not even talking literally. You can be in a theta state listening to, your favorite rock band. I mean, I think, and I talk about, layering all the five senses into your space and
Mm-hmm.
allowing the five senses. I just spoke last night at an event, and I was leading a meditation, taking everyone through the five senses and
Ah.
creating that parasympathetic room inside yourself to be able to go to when you're agitated, right? Whether that's, you know, the sound of rainfall or the sound of the ocean, whether it's the sound of the leaves on the trees and, the rustle of grasses, whatever is that thing that makes you soothed and
Mm.
calm, to reach for those things. That's about having that agency. That's about having, okay, well, what can I do if I can just create this delicious moment?
Mm.
Another way to do this is through scent, because scent is all about memory, and it's related to our medulla oblongata. It's a primal part of our nervous system,
Mhm.
and smelling things. I remember the smell of my great grandmother's talcum powder, which I was obsessed with as a little girl. And it had a very particular scent. And I'm like, once I smelt it one time, and I'm like, oh my God, I felt transported back to my grandparents' home in Pakistan. So it's that feeling of innocence, of joy,
Mhm.
and to be able to, I used to take, I love lavender. I would take essential oil, dab it on the corners of my scarf, which I recommended everyone do when I was going through chemotherapy. So I would, I couldn't take that many things. So I would at least smell it and feel like, okay, well, this is calming. This is something that, you
Mhm.
know, helps entrain my brain waves. So to bring that back into center. And so using these senses, I think is really important to design your experience at home. You have the power to create that beauty at all times. And that really is, Laurie, your paradise. Your paradise is now. And by the way, the reason why I named my book Purgatory to Paradise was that I was in a state of purgatory. And I
Mhm.
think there are,
In your life,
yeah,
separate from your diagnosis. Is that what
yeah,
you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. I was in a toxic relationship. I was on a treadmill, and I was never going to reach the finish line. And I realized that not only, and I use this analogy when it comes to, marketing strategies and bait and switch and all sorts of industries where you're promised one thing and delivered another. And I think you can apply this particular paradigm to all of these things. But in my case, the purgatory also was that of the good girl, of of being that Wonder Woman, of being that everything. That is a state
Mhm.
of purgatory where you're never going to ever fulfill all those tasks, right? Separating the lentils out. You know, there's no magical ants to separate those lentils out sometimes. So it's so interesting that we set ourselves up. And so it's important to create that paradise, not just in terms of aesthetic beauty, but in terms of the divine alignment on a cellular level.
Mhm.
You're in harmony with your choices.
And that
You're
is agency. You used that word before. That is true agency when there is that resonance, when there is that alignment.
Yeah, yes. And sometimes, we tend to react to events or certain things that happen in our lives, and we're like, oh, that's bad. And oh, this is terrible. And I always kind of, before I react, I just step back and I'm like, what is this about? What part in another mythological tale that I've read in the past does this remind me of? What's the secret here? Where's the wisdom? So I'm
Mhm.
always searching for that wisdom.
Yes. Oh, that just reminded me of we have a mutual love, Joseph in Joseph Campbell, and I got to meet him and even speak one on one with him for a while, a very long time ago, um, and and I talk about that in the book that I'm finishing of my own right now because it's always been that sense of the search for the Holy Grail, the hero's journey, and that all being the search for the self. And that is what you've so beautifully portrayed in your book and I feel like in your life.
Thank you. Thank you. I still believe in magic. I believe that we are creators and our life is poetry. It's beauty incarnate. And that is
Mm,
the mission, Laurie, is to help bring out the goddess in you, to help bring
mm,
out that beautiful space. And, when I was going through chemo, I designed a boudoir for a modern day goddess. And every single thing in that room was symbolic. Every single thing. There was a mother and daughter duo designers, which is very fascinating.
mm,
And the stool, and this is not even in the book, there was a stool in that room that was horsehair.
mm-hmm,
And I also had a bust of a black horse in the space. So Demeter, when she was worshipped, there was a story about her taking on a dark horse's head, a black horse's head. So I had that. But what's crazy is the horsehair, actual horsehair stool was made by the mother-daughter team of Demeter and Persephone
mm,
in that room. And there were so many other references that were woven in and out. And if I had my druthers, I would create your home, find your story, what makes you you,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then bring out that poetry of you on that
Mhm,
heightened form. Because sometimes we
mhm,
all shy away from like, oh, that's for other people. Like other people get to have that. No, everybody deserves
mhm.
beauty. You deserve to live in harmony and with a level of elegant poetry.
And that doesn't have to take a lot, but it does take awareness. It does take um, that sense of it's possible and it's okay and giving yourself permission. And I know that you have such a passion for how to make this kind of beauty accessible for other people. So I'm curious about how you're seeing your own work evolving as you move into the future.
Thank you. I've created beauty my whole life, whether it was a dress, jewelry, or your home.
Hmm.
And sometimes those projects take a long time. And cancer taught me to break out of that purgatory and to create a paradise using these practices and these new insights that I, really nurtured while I was convalescing. And I don't gatekeep. I think this is so important for everyone to have access to, because I'm a high-end designer in New York, but I want to be able to impact everyone who's going through, especially going through cancer, but also, on the flip side, doctors who don't understand how important their environment is when a patient walks through the door and how that affects that whole experience. So for me to help educate providers, practitioners, therapists, healers, create a gorgeous, aligned, circadian certified space that is also a joy to be in.
Yeah. Think of our healers, and by that I mean, including everyone in that. But think about our doctors and our surgeons in particular, how they would be impacted, not just their patients, but how they would be impacted by being in a conscious space.
Yes.
So are
Yes.
you getting to do this now? Are you getting to play in this way now?
It's a sign of what's to come. It's really, really great. I'm on an
Love that.
advisory board. It's such a pleasure right now to weave all these things. Sometimes I'm in the statesman point in my life. I've created and now I've taken all these disparate threads and I'm now weaving all these threads into a new tapestry. And you know what happens when you weave these different threads together? You get different colors, you get different
Mm.
and these colors and hues, Laurie, are ones that I've never seen before.
Wow. Wow. Oh, you are also in true hero's journey fashion, taking the boon that you received and bringing it out into the world, because that's part of the whole cycle is you've got to bring it back out into the world. You've got to share with the village what you've learned, what you've received.
So important that you picked on that because we as a society have become so atomized. And I feel like
What do you mean?
the generations, even within women, are so triangulated. I grew up in a multi-generation home where 4 generations lived under one roof.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up having reverence for my elders, and I feel like there's a real kind of segregation between the generations.
Mm-hmm.
My son's a teen, and there's that, then there's the next generation, and it's like, I understand there has to be some separation on developmentally, but what I'm speaking of is that wise woman archetype,
Mm.
the crone archetype, the mother archetype, the
Mm-hmm.
maiden archetype, that we have been triangulated, made to compete against one another
Mm.
for a reason, and to bring that back into alignment
Yeah.
around that virtual and physical fire, and to weave together again as we weavers do, bring the knowledge of what we've learned to the next generation is something that I think about.
I became a grandmother almost a year and a half ago, and now coming onto that. And God, such a delight. I mean, such a deep, deep, deep experience of that continuation and the joy and the love that is almost indescribable.
Yes, yes. And to watch really truly your immortality. It's a real
Mm.
wonderful magical moment to see that legacy that is your legacy
Mm-hmm. Right.
in grandchild, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I love that. I love that. How
And what
beautiful.
can I teach him, and what will I be teaching him? And my daughter wants to have more, so I get to have this whole experience. Yeah, yeah.
Wonderful.
So I'm thinking now about collective well-being. That really the kinds of things you're talking about are big. They're systemic, impactful kinds of things. And how could this all be scaled to really bring that in, bring these kinds of design ideas into public spaces, bigger communities? How can it change our world? Because that's really what Wisdom Talk Radio is about. How can we change the world?
I love that. That's a great question. Yeah, I'm a project manager. I know projects, I see reverse
Mhm.
engineer everything. And, the kind of big projects I've dealt with take years. And what I have implemented are practices and protocols that I've simplified for doctors, for providers, and for patients.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something you can implement today, because sometimes, you can't wait around for a renovation, and then it's committees and committees and committees. What
Mm-hmm.
can you do? How can you decorate your space in a way today, this
Right. Yeah. What what can we bring in? Yes.
right? And I mean, literally, even for your listeners, I have a gift. It's claimyourparadise.com/podcast. And those are three things you can get today that are my recommendations, that explains why you need them, that can
Mm.
start on that path.
And I will put that into the show notes.
Wonderful. It's all about the now. It's all about the now. It's all about what can I do today, even if it's the one thing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, oh, I'll wait until I get enough money, or I'll wait until I get out of this rental, or I'll wait until that's
Or it's too
purgatory.
much. It's just that's too
Right.
much. I can't deal with it. But you're
Right.
saying these are easy.
They're accessible, they're
Yes.
attainable.
Yeah.
And that's the point. I remember doing a design workshop with cancer patients. I do many of them. And one in particular, afterwards, a patient came up to me and said, I'm terminal. And this is the first time anyone has given me hope to live a beautiful life now. Because I thought I didn't have access to it, that I didn't deserve it because I wasn't going to live.
Oh my
And I'm
God.
like,
Oh.
I was crying. Like, it was so deep. It cut me so deep because
Mhm.
it impacted me so much, because she deserved beauty,
Right,
especially that,
right now. Right
especially
now.
right now. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. A lot of people think of the word beauty as if it's a luxury to acquire.
Mm.
And, I can't afford it.
Yeah.
I can't afford it. And I have protocols in place in my course that show you exactly what works, what doesn't work. And by the
Mhm.
way, you're getting a high-end, elegant approach, and vetted because it's non-toxic. So it's all the
Gee,
things,
okay.
right? It's not like just,
Mhm.
believe me, even high-end, the whole kind of luxury market is very toxic because
Mhm.
they don't know. And so it's really interesting figuring out how to answer your question in ways
Mhm.
that are impactful now.
Yeah.
The course is very accessible, and it will give you step by step and suggestions to just start with one zone, like your bedroom.
Mhm.
Here are three things you can do in your bedroom that will change your life.
Mhm.
All things.
And so, how can people access the course?
It's at claimyourparadise.com. And there's many different offerings. There's an audit list that will look through your space and think about materials that a lot of people are alarmist, and they say, this is bad, this is bad. Well, let's swap this for this. So
Mhm.
I have easy swaps for that.
Mhm.
And there's also a design masterclass. So if you're not a doctor, if you're not a patient, you can still um, get some great tips on how to transform your space.
Mm.
And I've
Wonderful.
simplified it in three categories, which will teach you on a physiological level, biological, neurological, aesthetic level. And neuroaesthetics, by the way, is like this fancy term these days, which is, hey, guess what? Beautiful things really affect your biology. Yes, we've known that for a while, but that's
And they
all it's,
affect every single aspect from every part of the cell on out. So
yeah,
let's
yeah,
let's just realize that everything affects everything,
yes,
and that beauty is not something that is just for a certain group of people. and that it's fundamental, as I think that's what I was saying in the beginning, it's fundamental to thriving in our with our life force.
Yes. I mean, if you think about those birds of paradise who are always like feathering their nests and collecting this gorgeous and doing these dances, we can make the effort. We can make that effort. We deserve to have a beautiful life right here, right now. And that's really our paradise.
Mhm. That's a beautiful way, I think, probably to end our conversation, which probably could go on for a while too, but yeah, I love that. And you know what, I do want to bring one more thing in, one more point, because it's something again that you said and that it leapt out at me, and it's something that I believe very strongly, but I think it ties into all of this, which is playing it safe is far more dangerous, and these are your words, than taking risks.
Yeah, big time. It's suffocation. It's
Mhm.
life lived in suffocation. You asphyxiate your ability to create. And we're, like I said, stopping our own natural flow,
Mhm.
right? The cyclical part of us, the concentric circles. And if we stay in stasis, we will suffer.
We will.
And that's worse
Because
than
that's
dying.
not nature. Nature abhors a vacuum. So we can't stay stuck. There is no
Right,
such thing. We're
right.
either ascending or descending.
Yeah. And when I was in the box, I was dying. I was dying
Mhm.
in so many other myriad ways that the scary part of leaping out of that box and creating a new paradise for myself in that sea, in the unknown, in
Mhm.
that bend really was the right thing to do. And I recommend that, yes, it's scary, but sometimes the best things are beyond that reach.
Yes. Thank you, Mawish, for such a beautiful time together, and all of your insights and everything that you shared with us. I really appreciate it.
I'm so grateful to be here with you, Laurie. Thank you.
Mm. And I want to thank our listeners, our viewers for being with us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. And please do join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. And if you've loved what you've heard today, please leave us a review, because when you do, that lets other people discover more of all this, what I would say, goodness, and it helps them to access their own wisdom. And all of that has to do with how we transform the world. And for more than for you about how to connect with and thrive with your own personal quantum connection, take the quantum connection quiz now. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.